back, listeners, to the Hero Whispers Supergirls podcast here on iHeartRadio and Spreaker and Society Bites Radio. We are super pumped to be with you tonight. We have an amazing product diva on the line, which we will introduce her in a moment. But for those listeners that are new to the show, just a quick 411 on who we are, Supergirls. Myself, I'm Jeannie Marie. I'm Chief Supergirl. I created Supergirls as a platform to inspire and empower college women to launch from college to life. Why did I do that? Well, because these women have a great education. They have a great time in college. They learn a ton, and then they go out to the real world, and it's a completely different animal. So there's like a disconnect. So I like to help them with tools to navigate the real world, like career clarity and networking skills and personal branding and financial management. So our podcast, The Hero Whispers, we get to talk to these women that are launching. Also, women that can be inspiring to these college women that is our main, audience. People like tonight's guest, Chen, who has been a force out there in the real world since she graduated and can give them inspiration and some advice and maybe some tips about what they can think about doing when they launch. So, without further ado, let's meet Karen Chen. Karen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jean.
I'm so glad to have her. Actually, Karen and I met at NYU. She was a student of mine and a great student, a star student, if you will. And I loved her career, and I felt like she could be really inspiring and helpful to our listeners. So her bio reads this way. Karen Chen is currently a product manager working in a nonprofit that uses design to foster healthy and engaged communities. She started her career as a project and product manager at General Electric. After 5 years living in different cities with GE, she took a year off to attend theater school before working in various tech startups in New York City. In her free time, she enjoys rushing for Broadway shows and running half marathons. What a cool dichotomy you have going on there.
Oh, thanks.
For sure. I want to hear. So first of all, the fact that you worked for a huge company, General Electric, and now you work for startups, that is, I think, really something that our young women, they struggle with in terms of a decision. Like, okay, do I go work for a big company first? Is that the right way to do it? Startups are very appealing because there's so much, you get a lot more responsibility at a startup, but it's not as stable. So I wanted to kind of hear your take on that and what you think about the way you crafted your career.
Yeah. So I would say I got lucky. I didn't plan on starting in corporate and then going to startups. My life just kind of happened that way. When I was really excited about GE because at the time, I found out about this rotational program that they had, a leadership rotational program in tech, where you're assigned to one of the GE P&Ls and you rotate every 6 to 8 months across the business itself, but within different departments. So for me, it was kind of you have your home company, but you also get to experience different jobs without the commitment of 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And it really let me see how different parts of the business worked and also kind of the work that's associated with those departments. So that's what drew me initially to GE, that kind of excitement of changing roles constantly and also moving around the country and experiencing different offices and living in different areas. When I left GE, part of it was to move closer to home because I was living out in the Midwest. My family's out in New Jersey. And then the other half was also, I felt like I'd been in corporate America for about 5 years and I lost a lot of the creativity and kind of excitement of work that I thought I had brought with me initially, which is why I took the year off for theater school because I did a lot of theater growing up, but it wasn't something I considered for my full-time career. So it was more kind of get back into that and jumpstart that creativity again and then kind of see where life took me. And that gave me the opportunity to move back to the East Coast as well.
That is so cool. What a great idea, though. I mean, that's a really thoughtful way of, and a really deliberate way of saying, I lost my creativity, like having a problem, and then going after it with a solution like that, like, is really creative and cool.
Yeah, I mean, looking back, it's pretty awesome. I think at the time, honestly, mentally, it's a big step because for me, I like stability, and to quit my full-time job, a great full-time job with a great kind of support group within the company, took me a while to get to. But looking back, it was definitely worth it.
I mean, that must have been so super scary.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Looking back, it was worth it. At the time, I was a little bit of a mess, but I learned a lot about myself and kind of more about what I wanted out of life, other than a stable job. But I guess going back to your original question, I think now having left that and then worked in startup, which also I just fell into, I definitely am a supporter of starting out in kind of a corporate, more rule-based world, because you really get to see how people kind of a stable way to work within a large organization, and then a lot of the processes that you put in place to kind of make sure you're putting out quality work. Because when you go to a startup, usually it's a very lean team. It's do whatever you can to get product out there or get the work out, and you're doing multiple roles at once. And I think for me, I constantly fall back onto the training that I got out of working at GE, of making sure there's processes in place to help make sure that what we're working on and what we're doing is a little bit more process driven, but also there's more thought behind it in terms of prioritization and how to make sure you include the right stakeholder versus just kind of running around like crazy and trying to put out fires all the time without really putting thought behind it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, and you're in tech, so the product design and product management aspects of it that you're in. So when you talk about process, they must have had the reason you went and you go to the startup, they probably love the fact that you had that background, right? Because you bring that to the startup. Is that how kind of what kind of how they made their decision?
Yeah, I think so. I hope so. I mean, granted, process for the sake of process isn't great either, which is part of I think that's the negative of corporate America, where sometimes it's just process that you don't need and a lot of bureaucracy, but there's a lot of good in that too, that you can kind of pick and choose what works and then bring it to the startup environment. And at the same time, startups are really cool because they move really fast and you see change really fast and you see your impact on a larger scale for the company that you work for. So if I ever do go back to corporate America, I think I'll bring a lot of what I've learned at in startup companies back to that environment as well. So different things that you can learn with different types of companies.
I mean, yeah, working in an environment like that kind of helps fuel the innovation at these bigger companies.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
that kind of dies.
Ideation work that you do, I think, in startups. Or you can't really avoid it. I think, yeah.
So the fact that you're working in product, did that you in tech, you started out that way? Did you major in that in undergrad?
I majored in information systems.
Okay.
And typically, people who major in information systems, you either go more of the CS route or the business route. But you get exposure to both. So I went more of the business route. So I love working with engineers. I can't code at all. But I like understanding the engineering process and kind of seeing the magic that happens when you have an idea that supports the business or your users, and then see the engineers kind of make that come to life. So that's what drew me to product, is solving people's problems and making their lives easier, but then also getting to work with the engineers that make that magic happen. It
is so cool. Yeah. I love that part of it too. I love the UX and the CX part. So I'm so fascinated by what you do. Can you give us an example of something like at your current startup, what you just talked about, like having a problem and solving it with the tech?
Yeah. Trying to think of one. trying to think of a good one that touches both the internal and the external users, because sometimes they're conflicting requirements, but they're all trying to accomplish a similar feature or functionality.
Do you think it's oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. You had a question?
No, I was going to say that you work in a nonprofit now. So is the work you do in a nonprofit, is it different in terms of design and tech versus when you work in a for-profit?
I wouldn't say the work is different. I think just this team just happens to be leaner, so I'm stepping in on a lot more of the things I typically have a person supporting on, for example, a UI UX designer and whatnot. But the work's the same. I had a thought, I lost it. But the work's the same. I'd say for me, because we're still building product to solve for people's needs, I think the difference for me is more of a mental shift where I know what I'm doing is bettering kind of people's lives versus a lot of my previous experiences were more around how do we make money for the company, period, kind of thing. And the initial excitement of building new things and learning new things is great. But then after some time, it's kind of, I always get into the cycle of why am I really doing this, or how is this helping anyone other than, making this a better company. And so what I love about working for a nonprofit, and this is my first experience doing that, is it goes beyond making money for the company, but also how are we making our communities better? How are we allowing people to live healthier? How are we improving the living conditions or the working conditions that people are living in? So that's changed a lot in how I am excited to get to work or stay late on a work day.
So it's just a bigger purpose.
Yeah.
That drives you.
It sounds corny, but yeah.
Definitely not corny. I mean, everybody has something that motivates them. And I think it's kind of cool. I mean, it sounds like this is a theme that's driving you, like you, when you left the GE thing and you went back to theater school, you that whole thing was still driving you. So it was the same kind of struggle or challenge. And then now you're at this nonprofit that's helping lives. So it sounds like you're on the path, you're just finding different ways about it. That's what it sounds like to me. So where did you go to theater school?
Lee Strasberg.
Oh,
it's down by Union Square. I think a lot of the NYU students actually go there too.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
That was an experience. I've discovered, I think, being a theater school student was too far on the other spectrum, so I needed to bring it back to a little thing more. But it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot, and I definitely watch theater and movies and look at actors very differently. There's a lot more respect for what they're able to accomplish.
I mean, and you learn a lot. I think you can use a lot of what you learn in theater and improv and those mediums in business.
Yeah, one of these exercises I really loved that I learned at theater school that I tried to apply at work is there's this exercise where when you read a scene and you obviously have your own interpretation of it, force yourself to do it different ways, even if it doesn't make sense. Like if it's clearly a dramatic scene, force yourself to do it comedically or some other way that's completely not how you interpreted it. And you find a lot more things with the scene and what you're capable of doing. So I try to do that with kind of day to day too. If we encounter a problem or we encounter something that we're trying to be creative about, try to not look at it logically and what your instinct is, but force yourself some opposite way.